It was just a typical Wednesday evening. I had gotten off work late, and as I walked into my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and slumped onto the couch, ready to relax. The dull hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of traffic outside were the only things breaking the silence. I had no idea that in the next few minutes, my world was about to change in a way that I could never have prepared for. My phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. The message itself wasn't terrifying, but the timing was. There was something deeply unsettling about it. "You'll never believe what happened last night." That was all it said. I didn't recognize the number, and it seemed like an odd thing to say. I figured it was a wrong number, some sick joke, or even a spam message trying to bait me into opening something malicious. But the curiosity crept in. I opened the text anyway. Then the phone rang. A second message came in right after. This one sent chills down my spine. "Everything you know about urban legends is true." I'll admit, I've always been skeptical about urban legends. Growing up, I'd heard the stories about the vanishing hitchhiker, the haunted mirrors, the creepy creature living in the sewers. But I'd always brushed them off. Just stories, nothing more. I'm not the type to jump at shadows. But last night, as I sat there staring at that message, something told me I was about to find out that some of these legends are far more than just stories. It all started innocently enough. I had just moved into a new apartment on the edge of town. The building was old, the kind of place you'd expect to see in a ghost story. But I wasn't concerned. It was cheap, had a good view, and for all intents and purposes, it was home. The neighbors seemed nice, quiet, friendly, nothing out of the ordinary. The apartment had a weird vibe though. I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was the creaky floors, or the way the lights seemed to flicker every now and then. Or maybe it was the fact that it was located right next to an old abandoned warehouse, the kind of place you'd find in a movie about something sinister. I never thought much about it. After all, who really believes in those strange things that people whisper about when the lights go out? The message had me unsettled, but I tried to shake it off. The idea of urban legends never felt real to me, until that night. I spent the next hour scrolling through old texts and emails, trying to get my mind off the weird message. But then, as I lay in bed, trying to get some sleep, a thought crept into my mind. What if this person knows something? What if it was real? The streets outside my window were still. No cars, no sounds, just the echoing silence that you sometimes hear in the city at night. As I drifted off, the quiet was broken by something I couldn't explain. A soft knock on my door. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart raced as I sat up in bed. The knock came again, this time louder, more urgent. I stood up, cautiously approaching the door. No one. Just like that, it was silent again. I checked the peephole, but there was nothing. I hesitated for a moment, then opened the door. Empty, not a soul in sight. I let out a nervous laugh, chalking it up to my mind playing tricks on me. But as I closed the door, something made me look down at the floor. A piece of paper. It was wedged under the door, slightly crumpled. I bent down to pick it up, and the message written on it made my blood run cold. "I'm not just telling stories, I'm warning you." The writing was shaky, as if written in a panic. My hands trembled as I crumpled the note in my fist. What was happening? I turned to head back to the living room when my phone buzzed again. "Don't ignore it, the Whistler is coming for you." I didn't know what that meant. Whistler? The message seemed like some twisted joke, but the fear in my chest was real. I grabbed my phone and texted back, hoping for some clarity, but there was nothing, just silence. Then, the next night, it happened again. Another knock on the door. This time, my pulse quickened. I didn't even get out of bed. I waited, breathing shallowly, listening for any sound. The knock came again. Software, almost like a whistle, a low tone that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. "Not tonight," I whispered to myself. But the moment I spoke, I heard the unmistakable sound of a creaking floorboard. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, approaching the door. I wasn't sure what to do. Who was out there? Was it some prankster or someone more dangerous? I grabbed the nearest thing, my lamp, and held it close as I backed away from the door. The sound of the footsteps stopped just outside, then a whisper. A soft, eerie whistle that made me shudder. The same low tone I had heard before. And then, the worst part, a voice. Cold, hollow, and terrifying. It came through the crack under the door. "You'll never be able to escape it. The Whistler always gets what he wants." I froze. My heart thundered in my chest. Suddenly, the door flung open with a violent force. I gasped, but no one was there. Just the empty hallway. but the floor was wet, drenched in something dark. The whistling continued, a low, guttural sound that filled the apartment like an oppressive presence. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but the call wouldn't go through. Every time I tried, a strange feedback noise crackled through the receiver, and then the whistling stopped. It was too quiet now. I don't know how long I sat there in the pitch-black room, my mind racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Every sound, every creak of the floor felt like an omen. And that whisper, that voice, it stayed with me, echoing in my mind. Then, my phone buzzed once more. "You think you gotten away? Think again." I jumped as I saw the message. It wasn't from the same number as before. This one was new. I didn't have time to think about it, though. I could feel the oppressive weight of something just beyond the door. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I grabbed my keys, phone, and wallet and bolted for the stairwell. The building felt wrong, like it wasn't meant to be there, like it was some twisted set from a nightmare. I ran down the stairs as fast as I could, the feeling of eyes on my back nearly unbearable. I opened the door, ready to escape, but I froze. Outside, in the shadows, standing just beyond the reach of the streetlights, a figure. Its face was obscured, but it was whistling. I couldn't breathe. My legs trembled, and for a moment, I thought I might collapse. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It just whistled. The sound was so faint that it felt as though it were coming from inside my head. I should have run. I should have screamed. But instead, I stepped closer. I don't know why I did it, but my feet moved of their own accord, almost as if something was pulling me in. Then, in one smooth motion, the figure turned its head toward me. Its face was no longer a shadow. It was hollow, pale, with no eyes, just black voids where they should have been. And it whispered in a voice that seemed to rattle my very soul. "You thought it was a legend. You thought you were safe, but now you know the truth." I ran. I ran as fast as I could, not looking back. But no matter how far I went, no matter how many corners I turned, the whistling stayed with me. It followed me, faint but persistent, a constant reminder that some legends are not just stories. Some legends are real. When I finally made it to safety, I tried to call the police, but there was no record of my messages, no trace of anyone having contacted me. The only thing I know for certain is that the Whistler doesn't let you forget. And I've learned the hard way that sometimes urban legends are just waiting to become a horrifying reality. If you're curious about other terrifying legends that turned out to be far more than just stories, be sure to check out my next video, where I'll reveal more spine-chilling true accounts that will leave you questioning what's real and what's just a nightmare. Click here to dive into more horror stories like this, if you dare.